All right, it's coming from the doorway too. Hanging out with Matt from Void, man. I appreciate you doing this. I'm glad we actually got a chance to finally do this with all
Yeah,
the chaos that's been happening. So,
it was fun
um,
that we weren't able to do it before. I'm sorry about the delay.
nah, no, I'm glad. I'm glad we finally get to do it. So the first thing I'm going to kind of ask is, uh, I know you guys come from like Dominus Guard, DHG, kind of a live background kind of scene. Um, I know people reference Void a lot in that kind of sense, but I hear more kind of like Voivod end or like Voivod or like kind of like themes period over for you guys. Do you feel like you kind of still fit that post black metal scene, or are you kind of more expansive than that now?
Um, it's interesting that I always am talking about black metal these days. I don't really consider myself to be a black metal guy
Right?
at all. For me, there's as much influence from things like Mars Volta. I love that first Mars Volta album, and I'm really into bands like Fugazi and
Yeah.
Farragut is actually one of my favorite bands. That kind of post DC hardcore
Yeah.
kind of thing that I really got into when I was living in Brazil in 2005. That's when I transitioned from being a metal guy to being more into kind of rock music, other things like that. So, I do a lot of music and, or have done a lot of music. I don't do so much these days. And Void is my only metal band. I've been in lots of bands. So there's a lot of influence from other things, but Void is the thing that has longevity. It's lasted, and that's only because of fans. The fan reaction. The fans have kept it alive, and the band disappeared from, I say, like 2004. I guess the band stopped, and after that, I wasn't really listening to metal at all. And it wasn't until I met Joe Burwood from Flowers of Flesh and Blood, and I was recording the Flowers of Flesh and Blood album, which was like a hardcore band.
Mhm.
And he's a real metal guy. He's like the Morbid Angel fan.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Oh, you playing in a metal band?" And I played in the band, and he was like, "Man, this is great. We should resurrect this band. I'll play drums. Can you still play the guitar?" and here we are. He kept the band alive. He brought it back. So he's not in the band now, but he rekindled that kind of fire in me to want to do metal again. And when I pick up the guitar, I do love to play metal riffs. So that's why it just keeps coming back. This metal thing.
Cool.
DHG and Vebu and Zenda had been a massive influence for me in that kind of like millennium time, around 2000, I guess. And the influences just today are the same. It
Yeah.
hasn't it hasn't been influenced by anything that anyone has recorded in the last 20 years. I don't hear the new, I don't know, whatever album. I can't, wouldn't even be able to come up with an artist now to say, "Oh, I heard that," and like, "Oh, wow, it's really changed my perception of what to do next." It doesn't happen. It's just kind of ingrained in the way that I play metal and the people that I work with. So as I say, here we are. It's amazing that
Yeah.
this band has still continued.
No, it's because it's original and different and interesting is the reason why it still continues. And like I said, I've only heard the last two records. Like I kind of started with the Hollow Man kind of period and then moved from there to this new record. So like I said, I haven't heard the earlier material. I don't know how much different it is versus like the last two full-length records. Is there a drastic difference in sound?
Well, the first record that we did was like a half electronic album. The first album was so all the drums were electronic. We had Carl Michael from Vebu and Zenda play drums on the demo, and so we were very much like coming from that kind of post black metal, weird black metal that was like all the rage around the turn of the millennium, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And we were listening to Solifald and things Arcturus, Ulva. These were the bands that were big on our scene at the time. Yeah. So why that one was electronic, we were just really into techno, and we were really into Aphex Twin and Square Pusher and going to a lot of raves. And when we didn't have him playing the drums anymore and I was programming the drums, originally it was like programming it to sound like a metal drummer in the absence of a drummer. But at some point my computer died and I lost all of the recordings. And then Matt McNerney, who was the vocalist at the time, said, when I had to recreate the whole album from scratch, he was like, why don't we just do it all like electronic drums? Why do we need to pretend that there's a drummer when there's not? Mm-hmm. So we went down that kind of very electronic route. So yeah, that was very different from what came later. But the riffing is always kind of like in that vein. When Joe Burwood got involved, he wasn't into that album at all. He liked the demos. He liked what Carl Michael had done, and he wanted to play the drums in that style. So the band then went back to like more kind of like black metal roots, I guess, in his time. But because he was a punk guy as well, it ended up having a lot of kind of like punk and grindcore influences. And at the time, we were very much involved in the London punk scene. And I had a recording studio and we were recording a lot of punk bands. So yeah, the music of that era has a very kind of like punk, raw, kind of like rough and ready vibe. And it changes according to who's in the band at the time. So then when we reformed again, in 2016, I think it was, we got a new bass player called Gerardo Serra, an Italian guy, and he is all about concepts, and he likes to have like long kind of like intellectual thought processes in things, which is not really my style. I just kind of like get the guitar and whatever comes out. So that's why the Hollow Man has this big kind of like cinematic feel. Yeah. All of that T.S. Eliot stuff, that was all his influence. Yeah. This one, of course, is the more kind of prog rock album, I guess, because the idea with Jaja was not to be limited by what anyone expects. It was to just do whatever comes out. It was the idea from the start that we would be very liberated and do whatever we felt. So that's why that one has this more kind of like proggy feel. Yeah.
I mean, that's what brought me to it. Like, that's what brought me to you as a band, is I could hear you broke free and kind of just did what you wanted to do on this record. There wasn't like, okay, this song's going to sound this way, this song's going to sound this way. Let's just make the music we love.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And also the difference with this one as well is that very early on, I'd recorded the first 3 songs, and George, who was going to be the drummer, but then didn't become the drummer in the end, he was writing the songs with me. I was sending him files during lockdown, and he was programming the drums. And he was constantly putting more of like a metal feel into it by programming the drums, blast beats and double kick and stuff like that. And then we decided, let's all write a song. So Only For You, for example, was written by Cam, the guitarist, and Interdimensional was written by Lars. So it started with the bass line. And when I said, let's all write a song, so everybody has a turn, and then we'll all stack our parts on top of that. And Lars was like, I've never written a metal song bass line first. So that's why that song came out like that. It sounds really different to the rest of the album, but I guess maybe all the songs sound a bit different from all the other songs, right? So it was lovely to have like a a refreshing kind of way of writing that everybody got to be the germ of the idea.
Nice. That's very cool. So I kind of want to talk about the recording of this record, of the brand new one, Jiao. I love how it's hard pan right and left speaker guitars. Okay, like that's like really interesting to me. It kind of gives me that vibe of the old like late 60s kind of like panoramic sound records, like what the Beach Boys did and what the Beatles did. Like it's great headphone music, or it's great if you have a great set of stereo speakers, you can hear like what's going on both sides and you know what's happening.
Yeah.
Was that always the purpose of this record, or was that something that just, you know what, when you started mixing it, it sounded really good that way?
Yeah, I wasn't involved in the mixing. I didn't mix it. I was going to mix it, and I did do some mixes, and everybody had a bloody opinion about fucking everything. That's just the case. And I was like, guys, I can't do it. Sorry, I can't balance what everyone wants. So we got this guy, Raf Henry, who is a contact of Cam's, to do it, and it was his idea to hard pan the guitars. And I said, don't do that, that's not right. And everyone was like, no, it's really good. And great that, like, when you listen to the music on a phone, for example, when it gets monoed, it seems to still work, and it seems to still be coherent. So yeah, that was I'm nothing to do with that idea.
Fair enough. So the jazzy kind of spatial tones, like that's what kind of really got me on this one, where I'm going to call it prog rock too, kind of more of what the new record is, but there's a lot of like very jazzy kind of spatial tones on this record as well. And then it goes into kind of jarring extreme metal for a few moments and then goes back to something different. When you're arranging song like the brand new songs, I know you said you all kind of took a turn and wrote a song, which is great. But when you're writing songs like this, is it hard to be able to say, okay, we're gonna have a little jazzy kind of spatial riff here, we're gonna have a kind of more death metal riff here, we're gonna kind of have more of a proggy riff here, but it's got to flow in the same tonality? Is it hard to do that with you guys, or is it just kind of an easy thing to do?
I don't remember like having many thought processes when creating this music. It kind of like it was written like in a fever, like a fever of creativity. Around that time, I had got good at the guitar because I had to learn that Dødheimskade set. Mm-hmm. So I had to practice a lot, like getting good at like trem picking and so on. So I wanted to write and record because I'd put so much time and effort into being able to play. So I just was throwing down riffs, really. I think, the idea of like, not the idea, but the way that we put together the songs, in that Cam did his own thing. I didn't guide what he did. Lars did his own thing as well. Not on all the songs. Lars followed the template of what I'd done in the first few songs that we wrote, but then later he then kind of like he found his place in the band, and he really kind of like owned the bass, So but there was an interesting thing that whenever I was doing a particular riff or a particular style of riff, the way that Cam would add his part was very contrasting.
Okay.
Like the Iniquitous Owl, for example, I was playing thrash basically, I guess, although it's kind of thrash in with this kind of like triple time feel. It's in 4, but it's got this kind of like rumba rhythm, this kind of Latin vibe. That's like from me, because I'm half Uruguayan. I seem to often like put like a kind of like a 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2. Do you know that rhythm? Like there's a lot of that. I catch myself doing that like almost too much. It's like a trope. And so I'd written this kind of like very thrashy stuff, and then what he was doing over the top, it was so great, because if I had written the second guitar, it would have been like the first guitar, but it would have been kind of like maybe harmonizing or doing something. I mean, yet he was playing like harmonics and making kind of like noise over the top. I would never have thought of that, right? So that's what sets this record apart from the other Void records. The fact that there was another guitarist who was doing something that contrasted what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
Previously, I wrote all the second guitar parts. We had great guitarists in the band, but they, like Elliot was the guitarist on the Hollow Man, but he joined after the album was written. So he learned what I'd already written. In Jajal, we already had all of the guys when, you know, we were writing the songs. So
yeah, very cool. No, that's great. That's the kind of the Voivod side I was talking about. Like, it kind of reminds me of like the Voivod moments, like early Voivod, not later Voivod, but like where it's the thrash chaos mixed with kind of odd rhythms and odd signatures. Like the guitars almost sound like they shouldn't fit, but they do. So you worded it really well, like the jarring kind of noisy dissonance with the kind of thrashy kind of rhythmic vibe that you had. That kind of was what part of brought me to listening to the band. So that's very cool.
Nice, yeah. Voivod itself, I mean, like, I have a lot of respect for that band, but I think that, you know, we're probably influenced by bands who are influenced by them, rather than I'm directly influenced by them. But I mean, Cam is a massive Voivod fan, for example. I don't know about Lars, but probably he probably
there you go. So I kind of want to talk about the vocal techniques that are on this record, because again, the word jarring is great, but it's in a really positive kind of light. Like when it goes from clean to harsh vocals, it's almost on a drop of a dime. It's not like there's a moment where it's going to flow into that. When you're mixing the very different vocal styles, the more poppy melodic stuff that I would call like, it's great. You said like the DC hardcore scene, like that's what it reminds me of. It reminds me of that kind of, Fugazi poppy elements mixed in, and then all of a sudden you remind me of like an old school 90s death metal band sometimes. Like it just happens, like vocally. Is it hard to be able to just jump between those two vocal styles, between numerous of the songs that you do?
In the live context, yeah, it's really difficult. But of course, the album wasn't created like that. We weren't a live band. We weren't rehearsing in a studio. So I didn't create the vocals based on what I would have been capable of doing in a live room. I just did whatever I felt like doing, which is, in my case, layering up loads and loads of vocals just because, you know, I can't stop. It becomes a bit of a kind of like, you know, at some point you have to go, okay, well, I've got 8 tracks now, I should probably stop. And I kept thinking, like, you know, some of these are going to have to be culled when it comes to the mixing process. We're going to have to, like, you know, we'll end up with 1 or 2. But no, they all went in the end, you know. There's like the kind of like, there's the low growling, moaning guy, and then there's the falsetto guy who goes on the top a lot of the time. And it's just like, you know, it's not because I thought, oh, this album needs to have falsetto. It was because, you know, my vocal range is limited, and after I'd layered up 4 parts, I was like, well, I want another one. It just had to be falsetto because you know, I can't sing that high. So yeah, it wasn't a plan. I wanted to take over on the vocals because I was getting sick of metal vocals. I know that a lot of people like it, and I have total respect for that. It's not really what I'm into. So I wanted to, and all due respect to the vocalists who were in the band before, I was like, okay, I had a lot of time in the Hollow Man trying to get people to do what I wanted, and in the end it was like, well, it'd just be easier if I just did it, you know. So yeah, in the end I just took over. The metal vocals are really only when, I don't know, when the riff can't have a melody, or when a melody sounded forced or false, then I resorted to doing the metal vocals. But I guess there's not really that very much of it on the album, really.
No, not in this record at all. It's a lot less than it's ever been before. So, but when it happens, it's very like stark and direct, and like you're not really ready for it. It just kind of just comes out of nowhere. So that's kind of cool when it happens. So
I read a review that a German guy did, and he said it sounds like a Disney character. Like it sounds like you've got Oogie Boogie doing the vocal on the album, and it was like, I don't get it, and I was like, fine, it's right, the voices kind of come a bit, sometimes sound a bit comedy. It's just because we're just having a laugh,
Yeah. No,
There's a
it's
lot
fun.
of time when I put on a funny accent just because it's fun to talk in a funny accent. I don't know, when I listen to like Fables of the post, what is it called? Fables of a post-truth era, I think it ended up being called in the end. There's like when it comes into the voice, and then the voice is speaking in like, what is that? Like it's like an African accent or something. I don't know. It's just fun. Just when you put on these funny voices, you get different tones, and the music just wanted that, I guess.
Yeah, no, it works well. It really does. Jumping into something different. All the previous, well, except for the earlier stuff, a lot of the previous stuff was on Duplicate, which is it's a label run by Anar, right? From like Beyond Dawn, and he was in Virus.
Yes.
I used to work with him. I had a record label, and I did trades with him a lot. So I remember Duplicate Record from doing trades and stuff. What was the reason to leave them and go to Brucia? Pretty much a very kind of different label, in my opinion. Not bad different, just very kind of sonically a different kind of a label. So.
Einar was really great. He kind of like saved us with the Hollow Man. He stepped in and put it out because nobody else would. He does a great job, but we did the promotion of that album ourselves. And I think Gerardo wrote like 200 emails to support that album. And so we got reviews based on his work. And I don't have Gerardo in the band right now. He'll probably come back. And I just couldn't face doing that again. And Brucia Records, they came to us after the Hollow Man was released, and they said, we're massive fans of the band and we want to do something with you guys, and we don't know, what it will be. Maybe we'll do a re-release, or we'll release some unreleased tracks or something. And in the end, it was like, okay, well, we've got a new album. Do you want to put that out? And so they stepped in, and they've been absolutely great. It's a small label, but they are really passionate and dedicated, and the dialogue with them has been fantastic. They're always there when we need them. So for example, right now, while I was cooking dinner, I got a message that they've made us a music video. I haven't seen it yet. Wow. It's based on a bunch of paintings that I did, and I sent them photographs of these paintings, and they've done that. So Einar doesn't do that kind of thing.
Yep.
That would be on the band. So it's been fantastic having somebody step in and help us. They've been like another member of the band, really.
Yeah, they seem phenomenally excellent. Like literally, I got a message the other day, like, can't wait for the interview with Void. I'm so glad you're doing it with them. Sorry that they were on the road doing stuff and you couldn't do it the first. Like, totally like the nicest, friendliest label I've dealt with. So I'm so glad that you're getting that side of the picture too. So
yeah. And he was based in London as well. He's not anymore. That guy, Void. Ironically, he calls himself Void as well. And I just saw him in a pub once. I'd seen photos of him, and I was like, "Oh, are you the guy from Brucia Records?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, you're the guy from Void." And then we just started chatting, and we got on. And it was like, "Yeah, let's do it. Let's do this thing. Let's release this album." And so it was a great experience,
Nice. So there's two tracks in particular on a new record that I kind of want to dive into a bit and talk to you about. If you don't really have a lot of commentary on it, awesome. But it's just the two songs that drew me to the album to the point of where I wanted to do this interview with you. So, so the first track is Only For You. And the reason why I love this track so much is it's the mixture of dissonance and poppy elements. It's almost like, and I'm 51. I can tell you're an older gentleman too. Like, we're not kids, all right?
Really? Seriously? Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I was born in 1972, my friend. But yeah, like I said, I could tell we both grew up making music and playing music, during a different age and a different era, which is really, I think, the reason why your music sounds so original. It's not just snippets of music; you're actually thinking about writing songs, which is beautiful. All right, like that's something that doesn't happen much. But the reason why I like this song so much is it's got this dissonance and poppy element, almost like if you like put together like the Pet Sounds Beach Boys record and then threw like Hassan from Emperor's solo record together and just like said, okay, I want this 60s surf rock kind of poppy tone and I want this progressive death metal opera going on at the same time. Can you kind of talk about that song first and kind of tell me how it came to be and why it has so much of a dynamic range?
Yeah, that's again because of what I was saying about the contrast. That was the song that Cam wrote, and he wrote a song that was like a maelstrom of guitar, of black metal guitar, and I was thinking, okay, does this fit into this band? And I couldn't tell where one riff started and one riff ended, to be honest, when he sent the first version. But luckily George took it and he programmed the drums before I did anything on it. So then thank you, George, for like helping me understand what the fuck is going on in this song. And then my intention was, all right, well, he's done this kind of like very thick tremolo picking chords, very black metal. I wanted to do something that was just like totally different to that. So I wanted to put in melody. So I actually played the lead guitar, I would say, on that song. Whereas he plays more leady kind of stuff on all the others. So I wanted to put in melody, and that Only For You thing, it was like, it just sounds totally pop, right? Why don't we just start the song with that, and then like we put it in, it sounded good. All right, let's loop it. Let's put more of it. And then when it went to mixing, we actually added in another couple of Only For Yous at the start as well.
Yeah.
And the way that he writes is that he tends to start with a riff and then he writes another riff, and then 20 riffs later the song ends. He doesn't repeat himself, whereas I'm more of a kind of like traditional songwriting approach. I tend to put in repeating themes, not necessarily the riffs, but the themes might come back. So I wanted there to be a common thread through this song where things that happened at the beginning would return. So it actually ended up happening in the vocal for that song, the way that like that Only For You, it was like, oh my God, I can do that on this riff as well, even though that riff sounds completely different to that riff. And then the end of the song sounds like the beginning of the song, but only because of the vocal. If you actually listen, the guitar is in a different key and it doesn't sound anything like the riff at the beginning. But it was like, oh, well, I can do Only For You on that as well. So I just kept putting it all over the song wherever I could fit it in. Yeah, I can put it there as well. Why not?
No, very cool. So the other song that I want to talk about is When Lucifer Dies. And that's probably my favorite song on the record. And it's a guilty pleasure for me because one of my favorite records ever is Themes by Over. All right. It's one of the greatest records that I've ever heard. Like, it may be musical perfection to me. And I feel like you took that thematic kind of creation of music where it was a black metal band and they basically just said, fuck you, here we go, we're going to make our own thing that's 1,000 times more original and better, and half the people are going to love it and half the people are going to hate it. And that was the beauty of that record. With that song, I feel like if Over continued in that Themes kind of vibe, that would have been a song on the record. So to me, like, it's a masterpiece like of music. So thank you very much for that. But talk a bit about that. Yeah, please talk a bit about that song, please.
Well, that was the third song I wrote for the band. I did Self-Isolation was the first one. I wrote that song on my own, and then I played it to the other guys to form the band. And then Fables was like, let's continue in that vein. And then after that, it was like, well, we've done a lot of kind of black metal now, and I was like, I'm going to write a ballad. So that was right from the start. It was like, yeah, I'm just going to write something that's just totally different now. I just wanted to absolutely make sure, as the band was coming together and we were forming the band, that it didn't become too much of it's another black metal album, you know? So I was like, I'm going to throw something into the pot that's just going to like make sure that everybody realizes that this is not going to be, you know, another standard metal record. So it was a deliberate intention to write a ballad there. Yeah. What happened with that song when it became so good is that Lars created a bass line where he used not only bass guitar, but he used a bass synth. And he created those kind of like, there's this weird effect if you hear that it goes, that's actually the bass. You'd never know. That was in it, and he just did it at the very beginning in the intro, and I was like, "What that sound? What is that?" And he was playing it through whatever million effects he's putting on the bass there, and I just copied and pasted it throughout the song, so that sound kept coming back. So it kind of like morphed into this very kind of like trippy psychedelic thing. So yeah, that was a combination of the intention to create a ballad, and also what he did on the bass. That song is massively influenced by two things. There is a song by a band called, I think, called Manimalism. It's Kim Solver, who does like loads of artwork for all of these kind of bands of this genre, of this kind of like weirder post-black metal. He did the photos for Virus and Vebian's Ender. He has a band of his own. They don't ever seem to pull their finger out and actually kind of like get anything done, but there is a song online that he created that had these vocals that goes, whoa, and I loved it. And it reminded me massively of David Bowie's Black Star.
Yeah.
So which also has that. So that's the influence there that went into that When Lucifer Dies, you know. That's kind of like, yeah, influenced by those two songs. It's nice. A shame about the rest of that David Bowie album, honestly. It took me ages to get around to finally listening to that album, and I was like, yes, I'm going to treat myself to actually finally listening to this album. And it's like, the first song is like, he must have put all of his creativity into the first song. The second one's quite good as well. It's a pity she's a whore. And then the rest of it just sounded like he got a producer to write the album and then just came in and just like waxed lyrical about how he felt about his life, you know. It just didn't really work for me. But the first
that happens, yeah, that happens a lot with Bowie. Like he has like 2 or 3 great songs on a record, and then the rest of them sound like, all right, you guys want to write a bunch of songs for me so I can have a record. Like that's kind of the way it feels like with a lot of his stuff. So
yeah. And of course, it was a big time for him, right? He knew he was going to die. The public didn't know, and he wrote like his death album. He wrote his own obituary. Fantastic song. I love it.
Yep.
Just don't play the rest of the records.
So let's say someone is going to listen to Void for the very first time. They've never heard you. They're either going to go see you live or they're going to go listen to a record. And they get to talk to one of the band members, yourself, I don't care, like before they listen to the album, to go see the show. How would you explain the band to someone that's never heard you and gonna like listen to your music for the very first time?
I don't know. I mean, I guess I would say, do you like King Crimson? And then imagine if it had blast beats. I guess maybe. Is that fair? I don't know.
That's very fair. Yeah, I mean, definitely. There's a lot of prog elements in it. I'd say there's, even though you don't have a lot of electronic elements in it, it feels very electronic at times, just the way it's created as well too. So like you know, when you say like Aphex Twin and stuff like that, yeah, they're not a metal band, but they're the most metal electronic band you will ever hear in your life. Like that's the best way I can explain them.
Yeah, like when I saw Come to Daddy the first time, I saw the video. It was actually at college. Some other guys on the college course were doing a talk, and they presented that as part of their talk. And I was like, holy shit, I didn't realize that electronic music could sound like that. I always thought that it was just like boring cookie cutter music by numbers. And then I heard Come to Daddy, and I was like, fuck, man, I was so wrong. That was great. Yeah.
Cool. No, awesome. I want to talk about the artwork for Jiao for a second. Now, this comes from a place of love, so if it sounds weird, just take it for what it is. But when I look at this, it's like almost like a thinking man's acid trip. Okay, and what I mean by that is like it's so thought-provoking looking at it, but it looks like you're at the very end of a really bad acid trip, and everything's kind of closing in on you. And you don't really know what's going on, but you kind of get an idea of what's happening with the music. Can you kind of talk about the artwork and how you feel it presents itself to the music as well?
Well, I can't really say anything about the creation of the artwork. I did not have anything to do with how that picture came about, but it is painted by Laura Weston, who is, her artist name is Catherine Brunier. She was the vocalist, the female vocalist on the Hollow Man. So she was very much a part of the band already. And when she just basically posted that painting kind of nonchalantly, you know, oh, I've just been doing some painting. She's like that, you know, oh, here's just another picture. And we were like, holy fuck, you know, that's amazing. And we were like, straight away, that's the cover of the album, you know. It was like, okay, Laura, that please, can we have that? And then luckily that character with the tentacles around the head, whatever she is, this female unicorn rider. Unicorn, I'm looking at it now. The unicorn has got like hands.
Yes.
Why? I don't know. And it's going somewhere, isn't it? They're kind of there at this gateway.
Yep.
Like a ritual is occurring. I don't really know like what she was thinking. She has like a condition. Is it synesthesia? I think she kind of sees sound as color. I can't say that she was listening to our music when she did that. I don't know what she was listening to. She's done a series of, her condition got really bad during lockdown, and she did a series of paintings where she listened to different songs by bands and then painted a picture. And it's not what you would expect, you know, like she's listening to metal songs, but she doesn't use like it's not all monochrome, it's not dark. She uses a lot of color. So I think that's fantastic, the way that she's put so much. It's got, the picture is so vibrant, isn't it? It's like it's got so red and orange and green. And then it was like, it matches our music so well, because yes, it's from black metal roots, but the absolute last thing that you would ever associate with the music of Jiao is like a black and white picture of a forest, you know. It's like, it's the opposite of that. And there is like plants in her picture, but they're kind of like jungle plants. Yeah. It was like, yeah, great, that's perfect. So luckily she allowed us to use that. And also she had done other pictures of the tentacle guy. So then we had like the back cover and yeah.
Cool. No, that's fantastic. Yeah, I think the artwork is, it's next dimension kind of, you know, looking compared to what a typical album that you would hear that plays music of this style would have. It's the perfect mix of, you know, yin and yang. So that's why I kind of really dig it. But the next question I'm going to ask you is kind of a thinking question. So if it takes you a minute to get an answer, completely good. If you could go back to when you first started Void and you could go talk to you and whoever else was doing it with you at that time, is there any feedback you would give them bringing it to 2024 that you would want done differently, or any kind of changes that you think would have sped up bringing you to where you are now?
Yeah, Yeah, definitely. I would have said to myself that the band is who's in the band. And I would have wanted to convince myself that I don't have to have full control over everything. That letting go is how to allow the things to evolve. If you are the guy and you have to have like everything is my vision, well, that's only one person's vision, right? You don't give somebody a bunch of flowers and it's only got one flower head. You know, the bouquet is all the different colors. So it took me a long time to realize that. And Joe helped me a lot because he had a lot of ideas and he had a lot of riffs, but they were very metal. And I allowed myself to put in all these other influences at the same time as allowing other people to do whatever they wanted as well. So yeah, that is definitely how the music has evolved on this record, I think.
Very cool. How do you differ live from recording? Like if I go see you live and I listen to a record, what would be the vast differences that I would take from it?
Well, the live version of the band now is only just coming together. We've got a new drummer, and I've met him 3 weeks ago. I went to Dublin and we rehearsed, and that's because Cam lives in Dublin. He's French, but he lives in Ireland now, and he's got this drummer friend there, and the guy has learnt the music on his own, and so we had a great time, the three of us playing. Massive hole of sound in the room, you know, desperately waiting for the bass to come in, because I mean, it's me and Cam are both like up here on the top strings, like and it's like, you know, the drums are blasting away and there's just this giant gap in the room where the bass, I mean, this band is like a bassist dream, you know.
Yeah.
A bass player can come in and just like fill out so much of the sound. So yeah, we were massively missing Lars there, and we haven't actually played with him yet in person at all. So I can't really say what it's going to be like. I think it's going to be good, but I can't say yet what the difference is between the record and the live band. I know what the difference is was with the previous incarnation, like the Hollow Man and the records before. Live, we would be more frantic, even more energetic. We had a tendency in that formation of the band to almost constantly feel as if we're falling forward, you know, always like faster, always more. But actually the records sound like that as well. So maybe it's not that different. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I guess. But you know, when you play live, you interact with the audience, right? And Levi was a great front man. He's a very motivational speaker. He does a lot of kind of poetry in between the songs, and I like to tell jokes. So there's a kind of like a lot more of a kind of like a light-hearted, good vibe, I think, when we play bands and play live. We're not one of those metal bands who go up with serious faces and then we just announce the song and then play. You know, we're a lot more kind of like a bunch of idiots. I don't know how to say that in a better way, but yeah.
No, that's fair. That's completely fair. Just a couple more questions and then I'll let you be. I know there's a drastic time difference here, so I appreciate you doing this. But the next question I'm going to kind of ask is, if there was one artist or musician that could take your music and make it their own, who would you want it to be and why?
Who would take our music and make it their own? I'm not sure I understand the question.
So basically, let's say there's a musical artist or a band that you could give songs you've written to, let them recreate them in their style or their vein and make a Void song their song. Like, is there any band you'd love? Is there any band you'd love to hand music to and say, "Hey, take these tracks, and I want to hear them as you"?
Right, yeah, I would give it to Sleepy Time Gorilla Museum.
Oh, God damn it. So brilliant.
Yeah, they've got a new record coming, I think.
They're in the middle of recording one right now.
Yeah, I just I heard a song the other day, and it was like, oh, it's like they never went away. It sounds like something off the Natural History album or something like that. But you know, they kind of they make their own instruments, don't they? And there's a lot of kind of like odd, unusual percussion. Godspeed You Black Emperor. That would be amazing as well.
That was one of the shows that gave me chills. I saw them back in like 2005 in Boston, and they literally played. There was no opening act. There was nothing. They got on stage and played for 2 hours and 45 minutes, just nonstop.
Was it like a big band that time? Because it's always different, isn't it? The lineup.
The one I saw had 9 members. It was phenomenal. It was like I actually got upset when it was over because I knew I was never going to get to see something like that again. Because the next time they played with 5 guys. They didn't play with the big band again. So
yeah. I mean, it's such a fantastic band, and that song, I mean, people always like the old stuff or whatever. I liked a lot of their stuff, but that song, the Dead Flag Blues, is that what it's called? The one with that's the best voiceover that's ever been recorded in history, in my opinion. You know, and I do voiceover, so I just absolutely love the start of that song. I love the whole thing. But like it's got to be the most kind of like evocative, kind of like it really puts you in this like post-apocalyptic cars on fire and there's no driver at the wheel,
right?
Oh my God. So yeah, when you listen to the Hollow Man, obviously we started with a voiceover, and it was a massive homage to that voiceover. Actually, I work in audio description, so I tell blind people what is going on in the movies. And I was doing, when we were doing the Hollow Man, I was doing the audio description for Apocalypse Now, which totally coincidentally is also influenced by T.S. Eliot's The Hollow Man. So I was doing the audio description for Apocalypse Now, and that's why the beginning of The Hollow Man starts off with an audio description. Basically, it's not lifted word for word. We adapted it to the album, but yeah, it's influenced by Apocalypse Now. The voiceover that I was doing for that influenced by the voiceover of that amazing Godspeed You Black Emperor song.
Nice. Yeah, I think the reason why that song is so brilliant is it's that stark string tone while that whole commentary is going on. Like it's chilling. Like I love it too. One last question.
Places though, doesn't it? That song, like when you listen to the whole song, it goes into kind of like a country bit at some point, and then it does a huge bluegrass piece throughout the middle of it. Yeah, it's amazing that a song, you know, can do so much. That can take you to so many places. I got really into this, you know, this guy Wim Hof, you know, the Iceman. Yeah. And he teaches this breathing method where you do loads of breaths and then you hold your breath for as long as you can. And I discovered that doing that whilst listening to that song is amazing. You get kind of like high on the oxygen whilst it travels through all these different. It's like, I'm going to actually make a video at some point doing the Wim Hof method to that song. I really want to put that up on the internet. Other people should have that experience as well.
Very, very cool. So yeah, the last question is going to simply just be any closing thoughts you have. Tell us what Void 2024 is going to have going on. We just kind of want to know what you're all about this new year.
What we're all about now is trying to get this live show together, and I haven't really started doing it yet, but I need to be contacting promoters. I need to get us on stages for, I don't think 2024 is really going to happen, but we want to be like on the festival circuit for 2025. So that is the big plan now. We're not concentrating on writing new music. We really want to get this live version of the band together. So that's definitely the plan.
Cool. Well, again, Matt, man, thank you so very much for doing this. I appreciate it. Your record's one of my favorites right now, and it's a continual listen. I've been listening to Hollow Man a lot too, because I kind of like the dichotomy between the two records. It's really kind of nice. I'm going to go back and listen to the other stuff, I just haven't had a chance to. Kind of really locked into those 2 records right now.
Great.
So,
well, I mean, a guy like you know, you're absorbing an awful lot of music, but you're giving back. I've really got to say thank you for that. You know, the work that you and people like you do to keep this scene together. It's a massive amount of work for us to put out a record, and we never made a record to sell, right? So we can't we can't be upset if we don't get loads of exposure or we don't get loads of sales. It was never gonna. It's weird, but the fact that there's people like you doing what you do, it makes this worthwhile. So awesome. I've just got to say thank you so much. You know, we really appreciate it.
No, it's a give and take, my friend. If I didn't have your music, I wouldn't get to do this kind of stuff. So very much in the same kind of feeling. But again, Clint from the Doorway 2, hanging out with Matt and Void. Really do appreciate it, man. You have a good rest of your weekend, and thank you again for doing this.
Cheers, buddy. Take care.